Hello and welcome back to my channel, Men with Mare. Alright you all, you have asked me for book recommendations for a while. Many of you know that I started an Amazon storefront and I have all the books that I love on there. I mean, it's a beginning list. So I am a huge lover of memoirs. That is my favorite kind of book to read. I love it so much. And I knew that when I created the storefront, I had to talk about Julia Fox's book, Down the Drain. It is very hard for me to even begin to review this book because of how complex it is. You might be like, why is a therapist recommending a book by Julia Fox? Because a lot of people might know her as, you know, the actress from Uncut Gems, but when she goes Uncut Gems, she is someone that is continually underestimated, someone that is judged just from the cover, just how she looks and how she talks, which I found it very interesting that whenever I listened to the book on Audible, it didn't seem as if she had that same type of speech when she was talking about her own life. So I really have been debating whether it's intentional, the way that she speaks on certain, you know, talk shows and things like that. It's kind of as if she's playing into these roles that she's been kind of forced into throughout her life to get ahead. She's definitely a type of person that is trying to work the system to her advantage, and I applaud her for it because, you know, the cards were stacked up against her all throughout her life. She doesn't have anything to really fall back on. She's pretty ruthless and I love it. I have a complex feeling toward Julia Fox just before I even read the book because I had an incident with my ex-husband on the night that we watched Uncut Gems because of his reaction to seeing her on the screen. So that was always like cemented in my mind. And I have been writing my second book and I actually go into that experience in detail. So it's very strange to then be reading the book and talk about that role that she was in. But after that, I fell in love with her whenever she was on the talk show Z-Way, which I love Z-Way. She recently did an interview with George Santos, which was just amazing. But when she did with Julia just cracked me up because she was so raw, unfiltered, and that is exactly how her book is. You feel like she's talking just to you and that you're getting the insight into her life that was I full with trauma. I have so many things to say about her parents. I know that in the opening, she asked her father not to read the book. And I don't know, after reading it, I'm like, he should have to face the kind of father that he was. And he was physically abusive, verbally abusive. Her mother was actually very similar to, I would say, what we've allegedly come across with Lana's mother, like very neglectful and not kind to her own child. A very problematic, anxious, avoidant attachment style between her parents that she had to deal with. And she talked a lot about drug abuse that she dealt with, an abusive relationship that I very much related to, and how it'll just start to snowball into something that you didn't expect or ever want. But she's also not afraid to be honest. She is truthful about, even if you leave an abusive relationship, you can still yearn to be back with your ex. And that's just the truth of it. She also has raw honesty about being a sober person, but still craving drugs at times because, you know, the need to numb that pain that she's experienced throughout her life is so great. I'm not quite sure when she said this in the book, but I wrote it down because it was something that I was like, wow, that describes a parental relationship that's not safe. So she says, I'm forced to face the unsettling reality that the people who are supposed to protect us are sometimes the same people we need protection from. So if any of you have dealt with issues with your parents or family members or people, even like in a marriage that you thought that person was going to be your protector, it's when it shifts into where you need protection from them, you will relate to this book. This book will make you feel like you're not alone. What's interesting is that the parts that she discusses, which are allegedly about Kanye West, they're about him, but she calls him the artist. She doesn't even name him in it. It really isn't any like the major parts of the book. Everything else is actually way more interesting, but I found how she described Kanye very telling. This book really showed and solidified how I already felt about Kanye. I know that Taylor Swift is not the only victim of his. His ex-wife is a victim, and Julia Fox has been a victim of his, and he really is the type of person that can manipulate situations, and I think it's like a sick thrill out of it. It's as if he just saw a picture of Julia Fox and just was like, oh, she's gonna be my girlfriend, because somebody from his team just called hers and she was like, yeah, I'll go on a date. Of course he chose a place where there would be paparazzi pictures. Of course he chose a place where there would be paparazzi there taking photos of them, and he just asked her, like,
want to be my girlfriend?
I just find that so strange. Like, it seems as if she had to be on the phone with him all the time. He wanted somebody that could 100% devote all their attention to him. She had a young child, so she couldn't do that. And it was weird because they only kissed. They never slept together, ever. He really just liked to dress her up. He offered to get her a boob job at one point. She's like, no, I think they look great. Whenever they would get into the car, whenever there'd be like light bulbs flashing from the paparazzi, he would kiss her. But then after that, it was like distance, like he didn't really care. So he was clearly, truly just using her, I think, to get Kim's attention, because they were going through a divorce at that time. He said that one day he called her up and said, like, I can't do this with you because you're a drug addict. And she's like, I'm a recovering drug addict, and I've been honest and open about that the whole entire time. And he's like, well, I can't date you because, my wife informed me that you're a drug addict and I have to be careful about who I'm around. The fact that he used what she had gone through in the past to then just like discard her, I felt was like really cruel. Also, because I think that he did know that she had dealt with drug addiction, and I even wonder if that's why he chose her to then, upset Kim whenever she would see these pictures of him with her. And I'm sure Kim wanted to protect her children, not knowing who Julia really was, but judging her as well on her past. And this is a man who is very, very twisted, that has no problem like walking into somebody's life, shaking it up. I mean, she does seem very grateful because she's like, he did give me publicity and helped me in a way that I didn't have at the time. So she speaks in a very, positive way when it comes to that. But it did seem like he just really used her just to get back at Kim. And that's kind of what he sees women as puppets, that he can do these type of things to. He's a very cruel man. Yes, she speaks about being a dominatrix at a very young age. She also speaks about being really a sugar baby. But it all is like, well, yeah, if I was in her circumstances, I would probably do whatever I could to survive. I mean, this is like no joke family. Like, that's not good. I mean, she had her first kiss when she was 11 by a 26-year-old. She lost her virginity at 14 by this older Italian man, and her reputation was just ripped apart because of that. Really, it's a result of a lack of love or care. I saw one person review her book and they said, oh, she's a product of lackadaisical parenting. And I was like, lackadaisical? That's like the farthest thing from what I would call that. That's like being incredibly generous to her parents. They were neglectful and abusive. And it seemed as if a lot of her choices stemmed from trying to find love and not understanding what that even looked like. I also related to her in a lot of ways. She very candidly tells this part in the book about when she realized that her husband was cheating on her, and they had a newborn baby. She was taking care of the baby and just running herself ragged, and her husband was coming and going a lot. I guess he owned a nightclub, and she said that she like walked into the bathroom and saw where he had manscaped, and she was like, oh, okay, well, at least he's not bothering me with that. It's like she didn't care. Like, she didn't have the capacity to care and have that pressure on herself because of everything she was going through as a new mom. And I actually have experienced the same thing, but never ever in a million years did my mind go to cheating ever. But really, it was like, if I wouldn't have been so naive or trusting of people or believing that people always keep their word, to you, I probably would have been suspecting and not have found out about my husband's infidelity in the way that I did, which was just finding a receipt for emergency plan B contraception in the passenger seat of his car one day. And I don't have fallopian tubes. So that just like, it felt very surreal. Like it took me right back to that moment when I remembered my husband like noticing when we were going through a hard time, but very much together. We were never not together. And he was manscaped, and I was like, that's weird. But I never in a million years would have thought it. So I think that everyone should read this book. I enjoy the references to pop culture, the things, the fads that were in at the time, the music, all of that was intertwined in her book. And it's just, I have immense compassion. I think she's a brilliant person. I think that she's extremely beautiful and she's smart. She's a genius. And I just like, as a therapist, some people that I've worked with in my career maybe have experienced one portion of what she's experienced in her life and have been so affected, and it shows her grit and resiliency that she has, because it's like she has had to deal with things a million times over from the average person, and she's still on her feet and standing and being a beautiful mother and learning from her mistakes. So I highly recommend this book. Please check it out. I think that there's portions of this book that I could take and analyze from a psychology standpoint and talk about how it impacted her attachment styles, or it impacted her self-view and her choices in men, and all of that. So it's something that I really am thinking about going into, is taking books or shows or movies and breaking them down that way. But it's just an idea. If you all enjoyed this, check it out on my Amazon storefront under the memoir section for Julia Fox's book, Down the Drain.